Welcome to Fantasy Fanline.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy Fanline, the only fantasy football call-in show, putting you on the air with industry experts every week. I'm your host, Greg Scalera. We are here. We are back. We're heading into week 5 already, which is hard to believe. It feels like we spend so much of the year preparing for the season, and then once the season gets here, it's like a quarter over already. But if you're back with us, you know how it goes. We feature different guests from around the fantasy football industry each and every week to take your calls and answer your questions live on the air if you so choose to join us. You can do that by calling into the show at 618-FANLINE. We got the number up on the screen for those of you watching at home, and you can give us a call, talk some fantasy with us live on the air. We're live right now each and every Saturday for the rest of the season at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which you know if you're watching right now. We stream live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch, so subscribe and hit the bell on all platforms so you know when we're on the air. We are at Fantasy Fanline pretty much everywhere you want to find us. We are there and waiting to deliver you content each and every weekend. And the day after our live shows, you know, you can get our podcast in audio format pretty much wherever you find your podcast the following morning, so every Sunday. Visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, for a full schedule of upcoming guests and to submit a question to our mailbag if you can't join us live. But speaking of joining us live, I am stoked to bring in today's guest. I'm going to put him up on the screen here. Jesse, what's going on, man? You might know him as at DynastyHumbleSR on Twitter. He is here with us today. Dude, welcome to Fantasy Fanline.
Hey, brother. Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming, and thank you for having me on, man. I'm really looking forward to answering some questions and everything.
Absolutely, man. We've been looking forward to having you. Jesse gives weekly, Dynasty redraft advice on his Twitter. He's a great follow. He's one of my favorite voices kind of in the up-and-coming industry of new voices in fantasy football. He puts videos up on Fantasy Authority. Jesse, you want to plug a little bit about what you got going on and what you can offer the people?
Yeah, man. My Twitter is basically what I, do. I'm on there all the time, just start sit questions, dynasty questions. I'm really into dynasty stuff, trades, roster construction, that whole thing. But, I talk seasonal things, and as you'll see, got some good knowledge. I was doing rookie spotlight videos with the Fantasy Authority. I'll probably be getting back into that in the upcoming weeks. Just trying to make some time with work and everything. But yeah, so you can find me on the Twitter, man, on the tweets.
Yeah, dude, I know the balance between the work life, and I would love to be doing this full time. That's the dream. Maybe someday, you never know. But for now, it's about having fun and contributing content when you can. Like I said, you're one of my favorite follows on Twitter. Until I was getting into the industry, I wasn't really aware of the fantasy Twitter space, man. It's huge. It is valuable. It's full of really great conversation. I was a big podcast guy. We talked a little bit before the show about how important conversation is in fantasy analysis, and as a player, having a space to do that. Twitter is where it's at, man. I was missing that for years until now. It was a really great find, and I was happy to connect with you there and make some new friends along the way.
Yeah, man. Twitter is. I use Twitter for years, man. Like 10 years I've been on Twitter. And, it started as just basically like, a space where you can get out your thoughts. And then I started getting into, obviously I was into fantasy forever. And then I started finding this thing called Dynasty. And I was like, damn, man, you get to keep your squad. You get to trade all year. It's like just what a nerd like myself is into. And, I started posting on some forums on like Twitter. And then I met like guys like Alex, some great people, man. And then it just slowly rolled into like, I was like, maybe I should turn my personal page into, a dynasty, page, because like I had noticed, I was listening to CBS podcast forever, and I noticed them briefly talking about dynasty, and I was like, oh man, this is going to blow up. And I got my page going, and then it caught wind right as like the whole industry kind of blew up into dynasty, because it was like forgotten about forever.
How long ago was that?
Yeah, man. It was over a year. I started in May around my birthday last year. So it was like in a year and a half now. I switched my page over, and, that's when I think Dynasty, obviously it's been around forever, but I think like, like I said earlier, like a lot of the guys came up and it started really getting pushed. Yeah, man, it's fantastic though. I love it.
Yeah, Dynasty has come a long way. I think when you say fantasy football, kind of your first thought is of redraft. That's the standard format, quote unquote standard format. But Dynasty is really rising in popularity, and I think giving it a run for its money for the people who want a little something extra and are in it past the casual kind of home league, work leagues. Dynasty is kind of that next step that people are craving in terms of strategy and gameplay.
Yeah, because it brings a different balance to it. Like redraft, man, like if you draft well, if you get a little lucky, you can kind of run away with a league. At Dynasty, it's you got to build this roster, and like you have to trade and maneuver, and if you're not being active, then your team really is going to suffer. You might get a year where you can kind of like pop and flash and win one, but if you're not really active overly, you're not going to succeed long term, which is kind of what you go for.
Yeah, it definitely scratches a different itch, just like daily fantasy does. There's something for everybody out there in the space right now, and it's a really cool time to be in fantasy sports, both as a player and as a content creator. So, with that being said, speaking of being a player and connecting with content creators, we are online right now. Our phone line is open, 618-FANLINE. You can actually pick up your phone, give us a call. I know you don't get as many chances to do that these days as you used to, but you can just as easily, if you want to drop us a comment wherever you're watching us, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, we will get it. It will come here to us where we are streaming, and we will answer it live on the air. So with that being said, we did get some questions in advance from our website, fantasyfanline.com. We have a mailbag there in case you can't catch us live. You can listen back to us the next morning on as a podcast and see if we answered your question. And we're going to get started on that. Chuck from MA, Massachusetts. I had to think for a second. Chuck from Massachusetts wants to know if we should sell high on Jonathan Taylor, or is he an RB1 rest of season? I think a lot of people are wondering this right now. He was off to a slow start. He was obviously drafted as a probably top 8, top 10 kind of guy. What do you think?
Personally, given the landscape of kind of running back and where it's just kind of struggling right now, I think he is a top 12 guy. You'd like to see his snap share get up because he hasn't been over 55% the whole year. So you kind of wish that usage would get up a little bit. And I don't know if he said PPR, he didn't. But in a PPR league, he has the first game where he had 6 catches, but after that, he hasn't had anything over 3, and basically garbage yards. But you got to hope the touchdowns get up. He had 11 last year, so you think that that's going to rise. He only has 1 on the year right now. I just don't know what you're going to get for him or who you're going to pivot to at this point. The running back landscape is tough. Besides Henry, man, like a lot of these guys, it's Cordell Patterson or DeAndre Swift. It's tough, man.
Well, when you're like you said, when you're talking about running back 1, the first thing that comes to your mind might be your expectation for output, for his points week after week. You're thinking high floor, high ceiling, consistent. But we're at a place right now in the season where I think your definition of running back 1 just really needs to be, who would I rather have? You might not be getting that consistent 15, 16, 17 points per week, but if he's not, if there aren't 10, 12 guys out producing him, he's an RB1. And I think that's where we are with Jonathan Taylor. I don't think he's going to be a league winner. He's not going to win you weeks necessarily, but I mean, let's play some name game. Like, who would you rather have rest of season? Obviously, you have your top guys, your Derrick Henrys, your Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, Kamara, probably CMC, Nick Chubb. Is that where you start to draw the line? What do you think? Nick Chubb versus Jonathan Taylor rest of season?
See, like, Chubb's scary too, man, because it looks like they're saving Chubb for the playoff run, right? Like, they're not trying to overwork him because they have Kareem Hunt. So it's like,
yeah, they don't have to.
They don't have to. So like, I'm going Taylor over Chubb. Another name is like James Robinson. Like, do you trust whatever Jacksonville's thrown out there? And I don't personally. I mean, I think he's an okay running back. He's good for fantasy, but I would take Taylor over him. Najee Harris, same thing. I'd take Taylor, man. Like, Najee looked great the past 2 weeks with the receiving production, but their line's a mess. Big Ben looks horrible. I don't know if you've seen that gif of him just like falling over the turf monster.
I saw it. I enjoyed it more than I probably should have. I've never seen a fall at that angle, at that speed before, I don't think.
I say it all the time, man. He's like your dad running as like but he's like 37. Like, he's really not that old.
You know, a lot of people newer to the game probably don't realize that mobility was a big part of Big Ben's game when he was younger. Not because he's particularly fast or quick or agile, but because he's big and he's hard to take down. And he was really special at extending plays in his younger days and kind of making guys miss, shaking people off, and getting those deeper throws out to like his Antonio Browns back in the day. But it's not there anymore, man. He looks like a shell of a human being. I pulled a stat about Big Ben that I'll have to dig up exactly, but I believe he's one of 3 starting quarterbacks right now to not hit a 90 QB rating on the season yet. And the other 2 are Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. So the only non-rookie quarterback to fall short of that threshold so far. So, I mean, what does that mean for Najee Harris? He's going to get a lot of that short passing volume. He's going to get a lot of carries, but I don't know if he's going to be in as many favorable game scripts as some of the other guys on this list.
Yeah, and Najee Harris also, his running has been horrible. He hasn't had over 63 yards in a game, man. Like, it's tough, man. These running backs it's a really weird year because typically you can kind of like sit on the running backs and like run them to a championship. But like, I think teams, because of the 17-game schedule, are like, hold on, we have to save these guys or like just lessen their workload, because it seems like there's only like 3 or 4 backs that are getting like a, 70% work share. And then CMC's breaking down basically. So it's like, I think the guys, like obviously Barkley is going to be huge moving forward, but Najee, man, I'm a little worried about him, but in the PPR format, you got to just fire him up every week, just hopefully you get it.
At the end of the day, I think the answer to this question is if you have a guy with the potential to be an RB1 the rest of the season, you got to hang on to him at this point, unless you have the luxury of, can't imagine this would be the situation, but if Taylor is your 2, if you have somebody else who's outperforming him, maybe you have some room to sell high and turn a profit on him. But if he's your 1, which I assume he is based on where he was drafted, I think you got to roll with him.
Yeah, I firmly agree. When I saw this question, I was like, I mean, in reality, it's a good question, but on the surface, you just, where do you pivot to? Like if you can get Zeke, do you do it? Yeah, I mean, I probably would. I think that Dallas is going more to a run heavy a team, but
Me too.
I don't know.
We'll get into that later a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Perfect.
But yeah, man, Jonathan Taylor. I also don't know what selling high on him means right now, because I think that there is a general air of concern about him. I don't think that anybody saw last week's game and was like, he's back, baby. He had a hot second half of last season. I don't think that has carried into a community consensus this year of Jonathan Taylor as one of those higher RB1s. So if you sell him, I think you'll probably get fair value, and I don't think it's worth, just because of positional scarcity, I don't think it's worth losing him.
Agreed. And like last year, he beat up on the easy part of that schedule. I don't know if you remember, but he had a horribly easy, second half of the schedule. And it was kind of, it mirrored David Montgomery's second half of the season. And like, they both just had this like crazy easy schedule. They both feasted and basically won your leagues. He's going through that right now, though. It looks like he has some favorable matchups moving forward, which is nice. I would just sit on him, man. Try to win some weeks, flash win weeks. And, I think he's going to set you up in a good spot, put you in a nice spot for a playoff push.
I agree. All right, let's move off of this one. Just a reminder, once again, I see a couple people joining us on the stream here. Our lines are open, 618 Fanline. If you want to pick it up, give us a call. We are here to talk to you, guide you through your Week 5 start-sit questions, trade questions, waiver wire ads. If you want to just call and vent about a tough loss last week or celebrate a big glory play that worked out, you can get on the air and do that with us right here. We will pop a metaphorical bottle of champagne with you, and we'll talk about it. In the meantime, let's move on through our mailbag here. Cordarrelle Patterson or Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week in half-point PPR. Speaking of potential RB1s from Steph in New York, what do you think?
Let's see how I answered this one. I actually like bold plays because CH looked real good against Buffalo his last 2 times. Buffalo seems to kind of take away the big play, and you can kind of beat him underneath, and that, that's where they use CH. They're not going to let Tyreek Hill kind of beat you. But you can't fade Patterson at this point, man. They don't have Ridley going. The Jets kind of suck, and I think you just got to keep riding this Cordarrelle Patterson 30-year-old breakout and just
look.
till the wheels
I know
fall
the
off,
Jets
pretty
just
much.
got their first win, but I think saying that they kind of suck is very polite. They're one of the best matchups in the league right now for running backs, and Patterson has been on fire, like you said. Kansas City and Clyde are going against Buffalo. I believe the top 3 worst matchups for running backs right now, so you got to take that into consideration. I mean, where do you fall at the end of the day? Is it Patterson? Are we at that place in this world that we're living in right now where he's starting over Clyde?
I feel like it's like a multiverse, right? Like I feel like we're in like a Doctor Strange different dimension. Like Cordero Patterson, who like I loved as a rookie, now after 10 years, finally is having his like massive breakout. But like he doesn't have over 42%. He's been under 33%, 3 or 4 games. And the guy just produces fantasy points. It's bizarre. I just ride him, man. I like I said, I ride him till wheels fall off. I don't really hate the CH matchup. I know that you had said, that Buffalo's tougher, but I think that against Kansas City, they play them maybe a little differently. I think that's one of the ones maybe where they just play a little different because, that offense is just so explosive. And then I'm really interested to see off topic, but Josh Gordon, how he looks in. I mean, dude, I feel like this is another multiverse, right? Like Josh Gordon's
I feel like
bad,
we've had this
Cordero
conversation
Patterson's
once
good.
per year for the last 6 or 7 years about Josh Gordon. Like, this is it.
Right.
Look, man, there's going to be a ton of points on the board in that Bills-Chiefs game. I don't have the over-under in front of me, but I assume it's astronomical, probably the highest of the week. Jets-Falcons, there's a world where there's no points. I mean, both those defenses are bad, which you tend to like for shootouts, but also both the offenses are pretty bad. So,
Right.
Patterson's target share should be pretty much through the roof this week between him and Kyle Pitts are the only options in town going against a soft defense. So I think Patterson's probably got the upside, which I never thought I'd say. And, he's always been a talented player, very dynamic threat. Those who are maybe not familiar with the teams he's been on in the past don't realize how long he's been in the league. Like I've seen some takes out there like, oh, Patterson, up and comer, give the kid a shot. I'm like, he's not a kid. He's been doing this for years, kind of showing up and being used as a Swiss Army knife. He was a big time special teams player on the Bears, big punt returner, was used briefly as a running back when David Montgomery was out, I think last year, the year before, and he looked good. So, I mean, he's always been around and talented. He's a freak athlete, great runner, dangerous in space, good hands. He played for years as a wide receiver, but I want to be clear to anybody listening who's not familiar with maybe his name in years past. He is a veteran. We thought we knew what he was coming into the season, which is why he wasn't really on anybody's radar. But here he is, man, making moves. And, we're 4 or 5 weeks in. It's enough to kind of establish a pattern. I ultimately think I would probably play Patterson, which I did not know how I was going to answer this when I started talking, but I think that's where I landed.
When you initially sent me it, I was like, oh, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then I looked and I was like, wait, would I? And then like I really looked deeper and I'm like, I don't think I would. You had mentioned the under-over. It's 56.5 for KC Buffalo, and it's 45 for Atlanta, the Jets.
Sounds about right.
It does. That Atlanta Jets game, man, 9:30 over. What is it? It's overseas, right? In London or whatever.
London, yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing Zach Wilson a little bit, though. Can't lie.
I assume the Falcons are favored in that match, which would
2.5.
Yeah, that would lead me to like Mike Davis, but he's just been such a wet blanket this year, and Patterson has been everything but. He's been electric. So, I don't know, man. I don't think that's a wrong option either way. I think they both have great games. Clyde is probably safer for guaranteed touches. I mean, it's not totally impossible that Patterson disappears, but just the usage pattern and the lack of other healthy options this week, I can't see how he's not the center of their game plan with the way he's been playing.
Clyde's usage is really interesting, right? His snap percentage has dropped the last 4 weeks, but his best games came back-to-back weeks. So it's kind of odd how that has worked. He beat up on Philly. They lost their big nose tackle. I can't think of his name offhand.
Yeah, he went down a couple weeks ago.
Their run defense, kind of went to crap after that. And then he beat up on the Chargers, which the Chargers always have a notoriously bad run defense. It's just kind of what happens. But the Chargers are like Buffalo, man. They're not going to let Tyreek Hill just beat them They don't play that defense. Clyde's looked all right, but it's still so stunning how like he came out of LSU as this receiving back, and he just isn't that in the NFL. And I always find that kind of odd. I don't know if it's Mahomes just throws the ball so much downfield or what, but you know, he has what's that? 7 catches on the year. I mean, that's horrible.
Yeah, he was a big-time receiver in college. Great skill set for him. And that's part of why we were all excited, right? When he was drafted to the Chiefs, we thought that was going to continue. It hasn't really. The reality of that situation is, you know, they have Tyreek Hill, they have Travis Kelce, and those are their 1A, 1B, in whichever order you want to flip them. And there's not really room for a tertiary receiving option as far as targets go. You know, everybody's always trying to guess every year who the quote-unquote wide receiver 2 is going to be in Kansas City, and the answer ultimately is there hasn't been one, and that includes Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's not really a significant part of that passing game.
Yeah, I remember in Dynasty they were trying to push the Mecole Hardman thing down everybody's throat, like, oh, he's going to be the next, you know, he's a speed guy, he mirrors Tyreek Hill, and I'm like, you guys got to realize that Tyreek Hill is literally a unicorn. He's not anything that you duplicate. The guy is electric with the ball in his hands. He makes plays on the ball and he's a smaller dude in stature, and he makes plays on the ball that bigger guys don't necessarily make. So it's like, I know that the metrics and like the number community kind of always plays to these links where like comps, but like, dude, you got to watch the actual player sometimes, because like if you look at Mecole Hardman and you look at Tyreek Hill, they're nothing alike besides fast.
Mecole Hardman kind of fits the stereotype, the kind of typical small, fast, boom, bust player. Tyreek Hill is small, fast, but he is not boom, bust, and I think it took the community a while to realize that he could be a consistent contributor at the high level, and that's what he is, and I don't think that there's a room for anybody else. So, end of the day, I think my answer is Patterson for upside, maybe Clyde for floor if you really just need like a guaranteed 15, 16 touches. I think Clyde is more likely to get you that if you're maybe projected to win by a pretty sizable amount over your opponent, but close game, or if you're chasing, I would go Patterson.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so let's keep it moving here. We will take one more mailbag question, and then maybe we'll take a look back at Thursday night's game. It was the first Thursday night game of the year that I think really felt like a Thursday night game. It was gross, but we'll get to that in a minute. In the meantime, are we just holding Allen Robinson for name value at this point? From Pedro in California. Oh, this one hits me right in the feels as a Bears fan. I'm going to let you talk while I gather my emotions here.
I was going to say, did you want to take this one first? So
no.
I've been a huge Robinson fan from college all the way to Jacksonville. I loved him in Penn State. I'm a Penn State, I guess fan. And no, we're not holding on to him for name value. You don't drop guys who have talent he has, and the target potential that he can maintain. Yes, he's having a horrible stretch. I think he hasn't been over. I think only one time he's been over 40 yards this year. It's bad.
Has not yet cracked 10 PPR points.
Yeah,
excuse me, half PPR points. Yeah,
he's getting outplayed by Mooney. He's getting out targeted by Mooney. Mooney has that connection with Fields from Georgia. I think they were in together. So the name, it's like almost like the Juju Smith-Schuster thing, right? Like, do you drop Juju? No, you don't, because like if you do drop him, someone's going to immediately add him. So if you don't want him on your roster, wait for the one blow-up week and then move him, because that's going to happen. He's going to have one monster week where everybody goes, he's back, and then just dump him. Don't drop him, but I do love the question.
Yeah, I understand the concern. He's certainly probably one of the bigger disappointments relative to draft value that we've seen so far this year, maybe in even the past couple of years. I don't know that you can start him safely right now, but I certainly would not drop him, because we've been talking a little bit of Allen Robinson the past couple of weeks as a potential kind of buy low candidate, and I think that is still true. It's just there's not a lot of guys kind of going for that trade value right now with the potential upside that Allen Robinson has. Justin Fields is a talented player. He was considered a top prospect in this year's draft for a reason, and there's a world where he warms up and figures things out in Chicago and lights the league on fire. I mean, he's that kind of physical talent, as a quarterback and as a passer and as a mobile passer behind a bad offensive line, there's a world where those pass attempts go up from week to week, and he targets Robinson as his true number one receiver. I know he's got the chemistry with Mooney. Mooney's a great player. I was preaching to go by Darnell Mooney when it was looking like they were going to make the switch to Fields, because Fields is such a highly rated downfield passer and Mooney is such a good downfield target. But I really think that, worst case scenario, he's a wide receiver 3, flex the rest of the season. Robinson is, but he's got top 10 potential. I don't think we've left that in the dust yet. I don't think we've seen enough from Fields to write off that offense. They just lost David Montgomery for a stretch of time. I think they're going to have to lean a little more on Fields in the passing game. And he's, this is really a bet on Justin Fields. It's, what do you feel about him? Is he going to figure things out as a passer in his first year? Dynasty, certainly you're not moving off of Robinson or Fields, but as far as redraft goes, stick it. I have a comment from a buddy of mine. Sounds like a homer. I totally understand that comment, but I think that, really anybody who's been following Justin Fields as a prospect, he's somebody who I liked even before I thought the Bears had a prayer of landing him where they got him in the draft. I was as surprised as anybody that he fell that far to them. I thought he was going to go somewhere else and turn another franchise around. He happened to go to Chicago. So, Allen Robinson, great talent. Fields, great talent. In theory, I would be too scared to move off of that. I don't think we can give up on them yet.
And Denver should have took Justin Fields, by the way. I know Patrick Surtain is great, but
Dude,
you really got to take the quarterback.
The craziest draft day decisions I have ever seen in my entire life, because the Broncos were that team that I thought was a quarterback away from being a legit Super Bowl contender. And they had a potential, generational kind of franchise quarterback on a platter for them to take, and they did not. Mike is chiming back in and saying, well, I accidentally drafted him in round 9, so let's pray. I think that's going to work out for you, Mike. I think that
might be league winning.
Yeah, he could potentially be a league winner. He's a great runner, and we know how much quarterback scoring favors mobile quarterbacks these days. So I hope as much as you do that he pans out.
One more thing I want to add about Allen Robinson. I'm just looking now. He has a 24% target share. You don't drop guys who have 24% target shares in redraft. You hold on. You use him as a bye week flex replacement, and you just pray you hit him on the right week. It sucks because of what you kind of invested in him, but like I said, man, it's just a funky year with what's going on in fantasy. Man, you see a lot of these 0-4 teams, and you're looking at their rosters, and you're like, dude, this is a contender. So just hold, man. Just sometimes it's okay to hold. These guys go through rough patches. He's gonna be okay. Justin Fields is gonna figure it out. Matt Nagy hopefully figures it out. Did he give up the play calling last week, Matt Nagy? Or I was reading something like that. He did, right?
Bill Lazor took over.
Yeah.
Look, I think that's a great point about target share, because people are looking at Allen Robinson's total targets and thinking that he's just not involved in the offense, and that's not the case. It's just that the attempts as a team have been very low. Certainly in that kind of fluke game a couple weeks ago where Justin Fields threw for like 14 yards or something like that. But they've been run heavy, leaning on the defense, leaning on David Montgomery. There just hasn't been a high volume. And I think if that kind of regresses to the mean, NFL teams just can't sustain that kind of low volume passing game in 2021. It's just not going to happen. So right. I think once we see that kind of return closer to the kind of mean of the league, the numbers are going to go up. It's just, there's no way they're not.
And let's play a little game here for a second, right?
Shoot.
Next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, okay? They play at Vegas. So do we think that they're going to have to score points to win? Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
They play Green Bay. Are they going to have to score to win?
Dude, don't remind me, but yes.
Tampa Bay, they have to score to win. San Francisco have to score to win.
Mm-hmm.
Pitt, okay. Pitt's the one game where you might get into a little bit of a dogfight because they kind of stink on offense, but they might figure it out by then. But like the next 4 weeks, this team is either going to be playing from behind or having to play in a game where they have to score a bunch of points to keep up. You hold on to them. You just like that, man. I'm sorry, Pedro, that this is kind of going, happening to you. But you just hold on, see where it's at.
Yeah, if it was still Andy Dalton leading that team, I would feel probably a little more apprehensive just because that offensive line is so bad. And we talked about this a little bit last week. My feelings on Andy Dalton as somebody who's watched a lot of Bears tape. He's a good player. He's somebody who can succeed at the NFL level in the right situation. And I don't think Chicago is the right situation for Andy Dalton right now. He can't get away from the pressure coming through that offensive line. He's got a bad play caller typically most weeks with Matt Nagy. Dalton is probably a starter somewhere, but not in Chicago, not with that line, and not in that situation. So, good question. Thank you, Pedro. Shoot.
I seen the meme. It was like this man, and it shows a picture of Mitchell Trubisky, and it goes, he went to the playoffs twice with with Matt Nagy. I laughed for about 10 minutes because, dude, it's so true, man. Matt Nagy's horrible, and this guy literally went to playoffs twice. It was hilarious, man.
It's a chicken or the egg situation, man. Did Matt Nagy take Mitch Trubisky to the playoffs despite Trubisky, or did Trubisky take us to the playoffs despite Nagy? I guess we'll find out. Let's take a break here to look back at the Thursday night game and dissect that a little bit. It's still pretty fresh on our minds. I'm going to pull up some of the stats here, but some of the bigger talking points. It was Rams 26 over Seahawks 17. It was supposed to be a shootout, man. That was like a 54.5 point over under, but divisional games are divisional games, and you never really know what you're going to get. And we got a kind of a snooze fest in the first half. It opened up a little bit in the second half. Let's talk the Rams side of the ball first. Matt Stafford, kind of underwhelming. Again, he didn't kill you, but he didn't blow you away. He threw for 365 and 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He was the QB8 coming into this week. How are you feeling on Stafford right now?
Stafford, he's a guy who I honestly would have put money on at the beginning of the year for MVP. That would have been my dark horse MVP, and he's played up to it pretty much. But this game, I was just mentioning him. He was a fade for me because I think not obviously he's probably played in Seattle before, but Seattle's such a tough spot to play in. I just don't really trust guys going into their prime time playing there. So I was fading him. I have him in the league. I started Jalen Hurts over him. I personally like Stafford. I like what he's doing there. I think he's going to be a solid QB1. I think he's a top 8-10 guy. But that game was pretty weird because he had a quiet 365, right? Like,
yep.
When you read those,
I don't know where those yards came from. I was so surprised when I looked at that final stat line.
Even like Cooper Kupp, 7 for 92. I'm like, when did Cooper Kupp catch 7 for 92? I felt like it was just the Robert Woods show kind of, and like he went for like 250 Stafford, and then there was a whole 100 and
Let's talk about Robert Woods. That's probably the big story on the Rams side of the ball. He was 12 catches for 150 yards. Finally, so which is it? Is that the real deal moving forward? I mean, he's been kind of a non-factor up to this point. They had a quarterback change, and with that kind of a change, you have to kind of make the decision of, okay, do I throw out the past couple years of target share history? Is that a big enough variable change that we now need to consider this the new normal? We had a 4-game sample size where he was not the guy or even one of the guys in that passing offense. Week 5, 12 for 150. What does it all mean?
So we've noticed something about Matt Stafford in his career. Now, obviously, we could say this and kind of lie a little bit because Calvin Johnson is the target monster, but he's kind of targeted one guy predominantly, and then the secondary pieces have been kind of meh. He did it with Marvin Jones a few years back. He kind of does that, and he seems to have found this connection with Cooper Kupp, which I understand because Cooper Kupp's kind of underrated guy. It seems like what they scheme up for Robert Woods is going to be what Robert Woods gets. I think that offense is going to funnel through Cooper Kupp as long as he's healthy, and then they're going to play Robert Woods as the secondary fiddle. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think he'll be fine. That's another team that they're gonna be in games, man. They're gonna blow teams out. So you kind of want to stick with this dude, but I don't think he's going to surpass Kupp as the primary target, shareholder.
I think so too. If you roster Robert Woods and there's somebody in your league who is victory lapping on their take, kind of their value of him as a kind of a low wide receiver one like he's been in the past couple of years, I think this is probably a good time to sell him to that individual, because I don't think he's going to be as extremely, I guess his usage is not going to be as low as it was the first quarter of the season, but I think it's indicative of kind of a target share pattern. I think we're going to get a lot more Kupp than Woods, and that has not been the case in past years. You can't discount things like chemistry between quarterback and receivers. It's not as narrative based as saying, looking at, I know a lot of people like to broadly use the term narrative for like revenge games and things like that, but I don't think quarterback changes and coaching changes and personnel changes and things like that, those are real, and those do affect usage patterns. So, Robert Woods is going to have games like he had on Thursday, but I think he's going to have a lot more games like he had the first 4 weeks. I don't think that pattern is going away, unfortunately. I
mean, perfect example of what you're talking about is Mike Williams, right? Like Mike Williams in the previous Chargers scheme was Anthony Lynn's scheme was basically just a downfield threat. And then Brandon Stanley comes in, he brings in Joe Lombardi, and they say, we're going to use him like Mike Thomas. And they actually have used him like Michael Thomas. Now, he's not the same player as Michael Thomas, obviously, but they literally have used him that way. And people are like, what the heck? Where did this come from? And it's like, dude, if you just read and you saw that they changed the whole staff, that's where it came from. Because the previous staff was funneling the ball through Keenan Allen, and then now they're doing it with Mike Williams. Now, obviously, Mike Williams had that stinker. I didn't mean to take us off of St. Louis, but LA, I'm sorry. But you just brought up a really good point. Right, like the multiverse, bro. But you just brought up a really good point about coaching changes, and I just wanted to add him to the mix of it also.
Yeah, Mike Williams is a guy we've been beating the drum for on the show. Coming out of week one, somebody called in with a question and asked, kind of which week one storyline are you buying after just a week of evidence? Kind of who are you buying high on just based on one game sample size? And Mike Williams was the guy, because, you hear these talks out of LA about his usage in the offseason, but actions speak louder than words. And we saw it on the field, and we were like, they were telling the truth. This is a definitive change of role on the offense. It's not like a boom bust guy coming in and happening to boom on week one. He's a different player for fantasy purposes.
Yep.
So that's where we're at. Tyler Higbee, 2 for 14 and a touchdown, kind of saves his day. Is Higbee, does he belong in that kind of upper tier of tight ends who you start every week, or is he more matchup based at this point?
I mean, he's a streamer. He's the perfect, after the big, 6, maybe 7, Pitts, Andrews, those guys, I'm okay with firing him up, but it looks like he's had 2 games over 10 points in PPR, but he hasn't killed you. He only killed you to 1 week 2 at 1.8, but he's playing basically every snap. You just fire the dude up. You hope that, he can get you to touch, and basically he's a streaming option at tight end, like freaking everybody who isn't, the top, 6 guys, in my opinion. I mean, he hasn't had over 6 targets. Yeah.
I agree. Everybody outside of that top tier, after that, you're kind of just hoping for a touchdown, and he's on a great offense, very pass happy team. So his odds of scoring are probably better more often than not than most of the other options in that kind of middle to late tier. But agreed, he's a streamer. I don't think he's a plug and play option at this point. He's not getting the kind of usage that we hope for. There's just too many options on that team. Everybody's so good there.
Yeah, and it's like that they're going to score points, so you just take a guy on a high-powered offense and hope that he scores. It's his week. And if it's not, you hope you get 4 for 40 and you get 8 points out of him.
Yeah, man. Let's move over to the Seahawks, who lost this game after keeping it pretty close most of the night. It was mostly a mess on that side of the ball. Russell Wilson went down with, I think, what's been described as a badly sprained finger. We're expecting him to miss some time, right? Like 4 or 5 weeks. He threw for 152 and a touchdown and a pick. Gino Smith came in late in the game, looked pretty good. He threw for another 131 and 1-1 as well. Interception probably wasn't really his fault. Lockett fell down on that route. Probably could have made a better throw, but ultimately it's hard to do much when your receiver goes down. What are the implications for the weapons in Seattle under Gino Smith?
Yeah, I'm scared. If I had a bunch of shares of them, I'd be real scared. More for DK. Well, Lockett's a boomer bust guy anyway, right? You know, you're kind of getting that from him. DK is the guy who, I know he had the big game, but typically backup quarterbacks, when they get thrown in the halftime or injury, they play pretty well because the defense isn't schemed for them. They don't have the time to process what's going on. They just kind of take the instincts and take it over. And I know that, you know, people are going to be like, well, why can't they do it every week? Well, that's why they're backup quarterbacks. So they're missing something, right? Most of the time, right? And Gino's been around the block, man. He's not, people think like you said, spring chicken, man. This guy's played with the Jets. He's played with the Chargers. He's been around. We know what Gino Smith is at this point. Then we think that they wanted to be a run-happy team beforehand. Wait until Gino Smith's their quarterback full-time and Chris Carson's back. I mean, Chris Carson, I think, gets a little bump, and the rest of everybody gets a slight bump down. You know, DK could be a wide receiver 2. Tyler Lockett could be a wide receiver low-end 2, high-end 3, in my opinion. And you'll fire up Chris Carson when he's healthy. And
I'd be afraid to touch Tyler Lockett, I think,
for sure,
for the near future. If you can sell him based off of his strong start this year, I'd probably do it. DK Metcalf is going to take a hit, but he's still probably going to be the primary target on that offense. He's a big physical player. He's got physical gifts that not many receivers have in the league. He's going to get his either way. Tyler Lockett, his production, I feel like, has been more of a chemistry thing with Russell Wilson. They always seem to be on the same page, kind of mind molding, and it's been about efficiency with Lockett rather than just making plays and demanding targets. So, Gino Smith, like you said, has been around the block. He's gotten punched in the face in at least one other locker room in the NFL before coming to Seattle. I think that's always what I'll remember the most about him. Unfortunately, I had never heard a story like that out of a locker room, like when he got punched on the Jets, but. I'm rooting for the guy. I hope he succeeds. Like you said, he looked okay, but I really think that was just a product of the defense not really being prepared for him. He's a very different player than Russell Wilson stylistically. But Russell Wilson to Geno Smith, don't be fooled here. That is a big drop in terms of talent and quality. This isn't, Ryan Fitzpatrick going down and being replaced by Taylor Heineke. This is one of the best signal callers in the league. Being replaced by Geno Smith. So that's where we're at. But speaking of boosting the running game, are you expecting Chris Carson back? He missed this game with a neck injury, I believe. They characterized it, I think, as a long-term neck injury that flared up. I guess we don't really know what to expect. Is it Collins moving forward? Is it Carson? What do you make of it?
I don't. You said it exactly how they were saying it. It's a long-term injury that flared up. Maybe if it was a Sunday game, he plays, but I saw in big bold letters, they said this is a 1 week thing. So I assume it's just a 1 week thing. I always kind of liked Alex Collins. I liked him in Arkansas. I thought he was a good back in Baltimore. And then he got kind of heavy and, kind of got out of favor. And then I'm deathly afraid of this offense, man. You know how many times Russell Wilson just goes back, throws up lollipops, and they just happen to fall in somebody's lap? I know I'm making it sound simpler, but that's kind of so much of Russell Wilson's game is kind of deep ball. His around the pocket and he just throws one up, and we're like, what the hell? And DK comes down with a 60-yard touchdown, or Lockett comes down with a 70-yard touchdown. Geno Smith isn't going to give you that, and don't let the stat line fool you. Like you said, man, there's a giant gap between the two. Carson is the one guy who's okay with firing going forward, because one thing we've seen with Seattle is they're going to run and they're going to push to run. If he's out, I think you're okay with firing up Alex Collins as a flex RB2. That's kind of where I'm at with those two.
Yep, those running backs are going to succeed on volume and volume alone moving forward. Russell Wilson was kind of the antithesis of a system quarterback. He elevated that offense. He made his weapons more valuable. And whether it's Chris Carson or Alex Collins moving forward, The team's going to need them for a lot of carries, and I don't think they're going to get as many scoring opportunities, but I think they're still probably safe bets in that RB2 territory, like you said. Outside of that, Will Dissly, 2 for 29. I thought maybe he might be a thing with Gerald Everett out, but not so much. So that's pretty much it from that game. Any other takeaways you want to mention before we jump back into some questions here?
No, I thought that was perfect, man. I thought we hit everything. Like I said, man. One thing, dynasty wise, if anybody's fading DK Metcalf, go out and try to acquire him, because if there's a time to buy, it's right now. Maybe just see if they'll panic sell at this point. The savvy manager won't. But you could always send out trades, man. Please go out and try to trade for him, because at this point, this is the lowest his perceived, in quotes, value is going to be.
Yep, that's a great point. You got to know who you're playing with, and if you're the DK Metcalf manager in your league is somebody who maybe is a little overactive, kind of jumps and makes a move, and is more reactionary than not, maybe take a shot at it. You never know. That's a great point. So we're going to jump back into the mailbag here. Our phone lines are still open, 618-FANLINE. If you want to call up, shoot the breeze with us a little bit, ask us your questions. But for now, we have Marcus from Florida who wants to know, what players are you targeting right now if you're 4-0? First of all, congratulations, Marcus. Presumably you were asking because you were 4-0, unless you're asking for a friend, in which case, congratulations on being a nice person. What do you think? Who are you looking at from that situation?
This is my favorite player, A.J. Brown. Please, A.J. Brown. Now, you might not get the savvy manager to sell A.J. Brown, but if you can, please do it right now before he plays Jacksonville and goes bananas. He's the wide receiver 80. I mean, he's been basically horrible. I was kind of scared he's going to have the Chris Godwin last year, but he looked really good in some videos that they posted of him, and he's just mentally he's just built completely different. A.J. Brown's a guy who I would try to acquire on all fronts. I mean, I have him on a ton of teams, so I can't really. But he's a guy, and Kittle's the other guy, because Kittle's kind of been a slow start. And maybe Trey Lance can kind of lean on him a little bit more than Garoppolo has been. Kittle's looked awesome with backups. So, Kittle and A.J. Brown, those are big-name dudes that I'm kind of throwing out there. But if you're 4-0, you either have really good depth, or you have Mike Williams or something. Maybe you can kind of flip. That type of thing.
This is probably your best chance to get Kittle all season, because we just don't know what he's going to look like with Trey Lance. And if there was a time to kind of roll the dice and get him at a discount, this is probably it. You might lose that gamble, but that's why you're getting him at a discount. So a lot of potential for him to pay off there if you're hurting at the tight end spot and you didn't get one of those other top guys. Certainly worth a look. I love the A.J. Brown call. I think a lot of people were already concerned about him coming into this year with Julio coming to town. I think A.J. Brown will be just fine when he comes back. I think he's still going to be one of those kind of mid to late wide receiver ones who you plug and play every week, and he carries your team. So my answer to this question, I think Michael Thomas is probably somebody we need to talk about here if you're looking ahead and kind of you don't need immediate production. I'm not sure exactly when Michael Thomas is coming back. I think sometime around mid-season, but dude, when he does, I mean, they have nobody else to catch the ball over there, and he's not going to be catching passes from Drew Brees anymore, but he's still going to be the only show in town at wide receiver. Nobody else there has stepped up. Even Kamara's not really getting any targets right now, so Michael Thomas is going to come back and be Michael Thomas, and if you can kind of, I don't know. It depends on the situation with the manager. If the manager who drafted him and has gone through the trouble of holding him every week, especially if you don't have an IR spot, he or she might not be willing to kind of give that up with so many weeks put into that equity already. But if they're hurting, if they're looking at 1-3 right now, maybe 2-2, and they need immediate help, go see what you can get them for.
Why not? Why not? I mean, Jameis, I have this in the notes talking about Kamara, but what is Jameis Winston at this point? Is he just a guy who's trying not to lose games, or is he going to be a guy who pushes the ball downfield, but does he not have anybody to push the ball downfield to, so he's just kind of playing it safe? When he gets Michael Thomas back, we'll certainly know that for sure, because if he's just playing it safe, then, Michael Thomas is still lead anyway because he's that good, but,
Yeah. Well, Jameis certainly
it's a great call.
He certainly is not what he was in week 1, which was a hyper efficient, kind of 5 touchdowns, 160 something yards. And I think that made a first impression on a lot of people that probably isn't truthfully indicative of what to expect from that offense rest of the season. It's hard with week 1 impressions because people take a lot more from it. And kind of in that vein, I think this is a good segue to what's one surprising trend so far that will continue and what's one that will stop from Dominic. That's a great question. I mean, we're far enough into the season now that we've got a decent sample size to kind of draw conclusions from situations that have changed since last year. What stands out to you here for this question?
It was funny because it actually ran into my last one. The one continue I thought would trend was the Saints offense struggling. That was honestly one I wrote it. The Saints offense will struggle moving forward because of Jameis. I think Kamara is going to be fine because Kamara is that elite talent. So, like, he'll be good no matter what. But his usage in the pass game has been horrible. This was, I posted it on Twitter. This was the first time in his career he didn't have a single target. I mean, last week, I mean, he got you a great rushing total with no touchdowns. So I think that's one that will continue. And then the thing that I think will stop is kind of what we talked about a little earlier with the running backs. I think Chubb's going to be fine. I think Barkley showed that he's going to be good. Zeke is going to be good. The league-winning running backs are going to eventually show that they're league-winning running backs. So if you're 0-2, if you're 2-2 and you have these guys, man, just ride them because they're going to be league winning, especially as the year goes on and these games become must-win for these coaches. They're going to ride Chubb. They're going to ride Zeke. They're going to ride Barkley. Joe Judge might be saving his job. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of talk in New York that, Joe Judge might be out. A lot of he was the darling last year. It's kind of odd. But
yeah, well, he's certainly not the head coach in the most hot water right now. A couple different guys I think are giving him a run for his money in the past week or so of news, but we don't need to get into that.
Sure.
I love those answers, and I think that managers of those players will appreciate that answer as well, maybe put some concern to ease. Kind of in that vein, the trend that I noted that I think will continue is the Cowboys winning on the back of great rushing and okay defense. They're not a top 15 defense, but they are in a much better place than they were last year. And that was something that jumped out at me. Even in the first game that they lost to the Buccaneers, they looked competent. I mean, I have a stat here about last year. Where was it? So Dallas last season was top 5 in opponent points scored per game. They were giving up 29.6. And so far they are averaging 24.2 this year. That puts them at 17 in the league. So it's a pretty big difference, man. I don't think that they have to throw the way they had to throw to keep up last year. You saw Dak come out last season looking like he was going to break every record, every quarterback record in the history of the sport before he went down with the foot injury. And I don't think that they need that from him this year. I think that they're going to continue to get good enough performances from their defense to lean on their elite rushing attack because that's what they have. They have one of the best running backs in the game and one of the better, I don't even know if you want to call him a backup running back at this point. He's probably more of a second running back option, kind of a change of pace flex guy every week. Zeke right now is the RB3 on the season. He's averaging 18.3 carries in the last 3 games, which they won all 3 of those games. Pollard sitting at RB26 right now, averaging 11.3 carries in the last 3 games. So they're combining for about 30 carries per game. And they're going to have their weeks where they have to throw and they have good enough receivers and certainly a good enough quarterback to do it. But I think that more often than not, this is kind of the new normal. That doesn't mean that I am, selling guys like Amari Cooper, CD Lamb. They're still some of the better receivers in the game, but adjusting expectations, I think they're probably more in that high to mid wide receiver 2 range. What do you think?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you since you mentioned it. I was going to say, are you concerned with the pass catchers because with Dalton Schultz basically showing that he's a good tight end, not just a like I was talking about the top 6 back earlier. He's showing that he's in that category because he's getting targets, and Dak is as good as basically as good as quarterbacks are right now. I've always been concerned with Amari Cooper. He's always been the guy that doesn't play well against good corners, and
Hmm.
maybe CeeDee Lamb's going to be the guy who gets the better corners, so it might fit perfectly. But I'm always one that's been concerned with Amari Cooper. It's probably a flaw of mine as a analyst per se, but I like CeeDee Lamb, man. I'm a big fan of the dude's talent. I think he's going to be good just based on how good he is. Cooper is a guy that I'm a little more concerned with. And then you still got Gallup kind of eating a little bit. It's tough, man. That's if you're right, which I think you can be right, and I think you honestly you probably are right. The pass catches there are gonna take a little hit, and
Well,
that kind of sucks because everybody was.
fortunately, Cooper and Lamb, I think there was a little bit of that concern baked into their draft price. If you paid for them, it was back of the third, probably top of the fourth as your wide receiver too, and I don't think that was a product of concern of passing volume in Dallas. I think it was more a concern of we don't know which one of those two guys is going to be the guy, if there is one. And I still don't think that there is necessarily a one there. I think it's a 1A, 1B, depending on the week. But if you picked one of those two players, you were doing it because of the potential upside of such a high volume passing offense. And I don't think that ceiling exists anymore for those two guys. I think that they're still going to be good. I think they're still usable. I think they're still valuable, but I don't think that kind of top 8, top 10 ceiling that we thought could be there is there.
Yeah, I'm completely with you, bro. I actually bought Dak Prescott share in one of my leagues, and I was like, oh, I was expecting him to be like 5,000 yards passing, and he's probably not going to get there, man. I mean, maybe with the extra game, he might get to like 48, 47, but I mean, dude, 4,200 might be where he's sitting, and with all of those
Yeah.
mouths to feed, somebody's going to take a step back, and that you're right though with capital, at least you didn't
Mm-hmm.
pay that premium price for those dudes, but you paid enough. But yeah, I agree with you. I think you're spot on, bro.
Yeah, and again, it's not going to happen because Dak isn't good or because the receivers aren't good. It's just the defense coming from awful to average, I think, is just enough to make a difference in the offensive game plan, especially when you have a guy like Zeke and a guy like Pollard behind him. Why take a risk? So
For sure.
my trend that I have to stop is QB1 Sam Darnold, which I hate to say
Yeah.
because I have enjoyed that ride as much as anybody. He leads the league in rushing touchdowns right now, not just for quarterbacks of any offensive position. He has the most rushing TDs, and that's really what his kind of top end value has been based on. And I think that's probably more of a product of them not having Christian McCaffrey the past couple of weeks. That offense has changed a lot. That game plan has changed a lot without CMC, and I think it's going to revert as soon as he comes back, which is as soon as this weekend. Maybe. The last thing I saw about that was that he was unlikely to play, but earlier in the week he was saying he thought he could. So if not this week, it's probably next week. And Darnold was still good in the first 2 weeks with Christian McCaffrey. He put up, I think, like 19, 20 points in each game, but it's not going to be like 28, 30, the way that we've seen the past couple of weeks with him being used as the goal line back. I think it's not going to happen. They're not going to need him to serve that role in the red zone anymore.
I appreciate Darnold for the Phoenix Rising of DJ Moore. That's been
for
beautiful. So I appreciate Darnold for that. But the one thing Darnold is he's not a high touchdown rate guy. He's at 3.4 on the year. That's painfully low for the efficiency that you would think he would have. I mean, that's actually that's lower than his career average. So, and think about how bad the Jets situation was for all those years. So the weapons that he has around him, you would think that TD rate is going to shoot up to 6, and it's not. So it fits perfectly in your narrative, bro. Like if you're not getting the rushing touchdowns, you're really not getting high passing touchdowns from him. And CMC's coming back and he's going to take those goal line carries. So I mean, I as he's great for DJ Moore, and he's less, exciting for himself, so to say.
Agreed. Now, to be clear, I think he's going to remain better than we expected of him coming into the season. I don't think he was really on anybody's radar as even kind of a high-end QB2. So I think he's going to surpass expectations. But if you are thinking of him the rest of the way as a locked and loaded starter every week who's going to give you kind of top 5, top 6 performances, I think you're going to be disappointed.
I think he's a perfect super flex quarterback. He's your perfect number 2 quarterback in a super flex league. If you have him as that, you're sitting beautiful. If you have a top, Josh Allen, Patty Mahomes, Justin Herbert, if you have that and then you have him as your second guy, sit tight. He's going to be just fine as that for you.
Yes. All of this to say, if you're in that situation, don't sell your QB1 trying to get a King's Haul because you think you have
for sure
a free QB1 waiting in the rafters. I would just say manage your expectations. So
exactly,
we are at about the 3:00 mark here in Eastern Standard Time, which we both are. Do you have time for a couple more of these mailbag questions? We'll leave the phone line open an extra few minutes in case anybody comes out of the woodwork. It seems like a slow day today in terms of listener participation, but we got enough of you who checked in with us over the week and wrote into the mailbag at fantasyfanline.com. So you know what? You're all going to hear these answers tomorrow morning and hopefully be happy with them. If you're not, tweet us. Let us know at Fantasy Fanline for me, at DynastyHumbleSR for Jesse. Let us know how you feel. So kind of circling back to that Atlanta Falcons situation we discussed a little bit earlier, Kyle Pitts or Dawson Knox this week? Thanks, from Catherine in Connecticut. Catherine, you're welcome, first of all. What do you think, Jesse?
And thank you for submitting the question. It's a great question. I think you should fire up Kyle Pitts, and with no regard, fire him up. This is the week, and if this isn't the week, you're going to see Twitter literally like this.
Yeah.
And explode because of what people had to pay for Kyle Pitts. Now, I tell you guys, I'm predominantly a dynasty player, and his rookie value was okay. I was perfectly fine paying 101 through 103 and non-super flexes, and then after the quarterbacks in super flex. I was okay with that. But in redraft, he was just too expensive. And he is a rookie tight end, and people had to temper the expectations a little bit. Now, you happen to get really lucky, or you did a really good job with adding Dawson Knox from free agency, so now you gave yourself a second option. But this is the week you got to fire him up and just hope that you get that top production from him. He's playing against the Jets. He doesn't have Calvin Ridley. His usage has been beautiful. Just hope that the connection between him and Matt Ryan is there this week, and this is the week that you get that league-changing tight end. Week-winning tight end.
Yeah, this is a big make-or-break week for him. And if he, prior to the news about Ridley and Russell Gage sitting out, I think it would have been a tougher call. But it's definitely Kyle Pitts. But with that being said, if he doesn't perform this week, I think that you need to start thinking about maybe moving on, which is a tough pill to swallow, like you said, considering the investment during draft season. But we're at that time of year where you need to start putting that in the rearview mirror and detaching your opinion about players' values today from how you felt about them in the preseason. Pitts is trending in that direction. He has not. I mean, and I have been a little cooler on him than I think most of the industry, just because of with my realistic glasses on. I looked at the situation and I said, okay, he could come out and still have the greatest rookie tight end season of all time and still not be worth where he was going in drafts. I mean, I was seeing him go in like the 5th, 6th round, and to put up a season and be worth that, he would not just have to break every rookie tight end record. He would have to shatter them beyond any reasonable expectation. And say what you want about his athleticism and his physical gifts, but it is hard to come into the league as a rookie tight end at that position and be immediately productive. It's not like running back where you see that, guys right out of the gate come out and they make contributions. The amount of obstacles I always felt was too much. That said, he has still been more disappointing than I was expecting. And I think that that's just indicative of the Falcons' passing attack has just not been great. You're seeing it with Calvin Ridley. Cordarrelle Patterson, I think, is siphoning a lot more touches from those options than we thought. I don't know, man. I think that Kyle Pitts has too much upside in this week. He's got the Jets this week, like we talked about earlier. Love Dawson Knox. He's been hot. And if you have them both, I would probably start thinking about making a move next week if Pitts strikes out in a situation this week that seems like it's impossible for him to strike out.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing that is interesting is people go, "Oh, he's the best tight end prospect," and then they forgot about Vernon Davis, who like came out and was like this monster in the combine. He was like, and
Yep.
I don't know if it's because a lot of guys are younger or just like I had mentioned Vernon Davis, and some guys were like, "Oh, well, what about?" I was like, "Dude, like watch his film, watch how good Vernon Davis was, and then look at his rookie season." And he struggled immensely. Now, I don't
Yeah.
think Vernon Davis was the route runner that Kyle Pitts was. He's a different type of player altogether. But just the athletic profile I'm talking more about was kind of like we have seen this and it has struggled. Now, like you said, man, I like Kyle Pitts though. I have a ton of shares of him in Dynasty. I think he's a really good asset. I just the expectations of him were just impossible, and they thought he was going to fill the Julio Jones role as a rookie who had no chemistry with Matt Ryan. Like chemistry is a real thing in the NFL. It's real and it's not easy to come by. Trust
Yep.
and knowing where these guys are going to be. And the other thing that nobody talked about was Arthur Smith's usage of tight end was not good in Tennessee. He had Jonnu Smith, who everybody loved, and he didn't use him. So I was a little concerned with that. Now, obviously, they play him in the slot and they move him around a little bit more than Jonnu did because Jonnu's a bulkier dude. He's not lanky, long Kyle Pitts. But I don't think people mention these things enough, and they should have been mentioned. Like the rookie tight end just shouldn't have been drafted ahead of T.J. Hawkinson or Mark Andrews. You should have drafted those guys ahead of him. Especially in redraft. I mean,
Yeah, I love pointing to Vernon Davis as an example. I didn't even think to do that through the whole offseason while I was trying to make my point about the difficulties of coming in and producing as a rookie tight end. I mean, Vernon Davis was up there as kind of a 99th percentile athlete prospect. And like you said, I don't know if it's just younger guys coming in and not having been around for that. I think that we get new batches of players kind of in cycles in fantasy football. And you can kind of tell when they started and where they are based on their memories of the guys who were relevant when they first came in. And I think that if they didn't miss Vernon Davis entirely, they may have come in towards the end of his career when he was a very different player because he wasn't young anymore. He couldn't rely on his physicality and his athleticism to make the kind of plays he was making, but he was still around for a long time just because mentally he was a great player. He was a smart player. He created separation. He knew where to go and where to be to make himself valuable to his team. And I think that a lot of people remember Vernon Davis that way. But when he came in, man, he was a beast and he was not great his rookie year. And that happens.
right.
That's just the nature of the position.
I mean, I guess maybe I misplaced how long ago Vernon Davis was a rookie. He was a rookie in 06. I mean, that was I didn't realize it was 14 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was.
Ugh.
But yeah, I know, dude. It makes me feel super old.
And I think it's that way
senior?
because he had such a long career and was around for such a long time. I think that's why it feels like he was here more recently. Not everybody plays as long as he did at the tight end position, but yeah, totally different player in the first half of his career than the second half. And not saying Kyle Pitts is going to be Vernon Davis, but what I'm saying is that you're right. If Vernon Davis struggled his rookie year with that kind of combine performance, I don't think we should be as surprised that Kyle Pitts is not setting the world on fire.
Kyle Pitts reminded me a lot of Antonio Gates, man. Just like the basketball way he attacked the ball. Gates was a little shorter and his arms weren't nearly as long, but Pitts reminded me of that. Like he wins like that, and it takes Gates. Gates is another guy that people look at and he was like kind of fat and unathletic, but when he was young, he was super athletic. He was blown by defenders, and that's what Kyle Pitts I think should mirror his career on, like an Antonio Gates type. We're gonna see it though. Kyle Pitts is nasty, man. He's another guy in Dynasty. If you start running into a frustrated manager, man, I've been sending out trades, man. Send them out. Try to get this guy because he won't be cheaper than he is right now. Unless he has a dud this week, and then really send out those trades because he's going to be fine.
Redraft, I wouldn't recommend buying low in redraft. I think this is what we're going to see kind of on the season with him. You can smash him in the better matchups like this week is nothing's a guarantee, but this is as close as you can get. But yeah, man, Dynasty, if you can get him cheap, go get him. So we have time for one more mailbag question here. Thank you, Catherine, for writing in. Good luck with Pitts this week. Hopefully he works out for you. If anyone wants to call in over these last few minutes, 618 Fanline is the number. In the meantime, our last mailbag question is a good one from Darius in New York. I got a kick out of this. If someone makes a move and then immediately lets everyone know it was an accident, should it still count? So a little bit of fantasy football philosophy here. I assume what Darius is referring to is like accepting a trade offer or dropping somebody by accident and then getting on, the community forum or the Discord channel, whatever your means of communication is, and saying, I did not mean to do that. Is it binding? This is a matter of opinion. What do you think?
The trade, I'm completely against. It should count 100%. It's a trade. You accepted it. It literally asks you, do you want to do it? Now, the dropping, there can be like sometimes where you like if there's no waiver, you just add drop and then like it's kind of mistaken. If you hit your manager up, your commissioner up right away, like, dude, look, I didn't mean to drop AJ Brown, man. It was a mistake. I meant to hit, whoever, Russell Gage. That one I understand. But the trade thing, absolutely not. You accepted it. You did. Don't go on the forums and check, man. Because the last thing you're going to do is you're going to go on Twitter. You're going to poll it. It's going to come back that you lost in a landslide. And then next week, the guys will blow up and then you poll again and you're going to win in a landslide because that's how fickle Twitter is. So just if you made it, you gotta accept it.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I think that fantasy platforms, from a UX perspective, UX meaning like user experience, user interface, have gotten really good about double and triple confirming all of your moves to make sure that you understand what you're doing. I know that there were situations a couple years ago with guys like Duke Johnson and David Johnson being on the same team, some confusion with like the D Johnson abbreviation, but outside of stuff like that, I think it's really hard to do anything like that by accident these days. I think that platforms have just evolved to the point where they wanted to make sure that they were not going to be responsible for situations like that. And that puts the responsibility on you as a manager to double check what you're doing. If you're really that concerned about it, maybe put it to vote in the off season. I wouldn't do it during the season, but if you want to set like a hard and fast rule of putting some kind of, window, half an hour after you make the move, that's your window of opportunity to say, hey, I messed up. But I don't think it's necessary. I think just pay more attention to what you're doing. And like you said, dropping a player by accident does not immediately affect the rest of the managers in your league the way that accepting a trade does, especially if you're in a league that processes trades right away. I play in a lot of leagues where we've removed the veto period because we just don't use it. So our trades process right away. So that player is on somebody else's team already. At that point, I think it's a little too messy to reach out and take that player back. But yeah, Darius in New York, I think that depending on the situation, that move's got to stick and you got to hold that manager responsible. Great question.
I don't know if you're familiar with this, but last year in the Scott Fish Bowl, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Scott Fish Bowl. Scott Fish does a charity thing. He's a really great dude. He's like a pioneer in the fantasy community, and he runs this big fantasy football, tournament almost. And last year, the kid took Matt Barkley, 1 overall, thinking it was Saquon Barkley, and
I forgot
he was getting roasted. Yeah, dude, it was brutal. But they didn't let him. He didn't. I don't know if they offered him to like do it, like swap, and he said, "Nah, I'm just gonna stick with it or not." But like, you can't make those kind of mistakes,
That's a bad one. That was probably, it's a good nature. It's a charity league, and it was probably in the spirit of fun and charity and things that they just went through with it. But I understand the really competitive home leagues. A lot of them are kind of high stakes, high buy-in, and you want to make sure that you're getting everything right. But that is on you to make sure you get it right before you process the move. So that's where I land on that. It's a great question. And at the end of the day, you're playing with your friends and you want to have fun. And if it's going to cause problems with the manager, then you got to do what you got to do to keep him in the league if you want to keep him in the league. But I think that the fault is on whoever made that move. Hopefully not you, Darius. Hopefully you are writing in as an impartial third party and you want a point of reference for your league So here it is. We think that the move should stick if it was a trade, and there's probably a little more wiggle room if it was a drop, but definitely take it up with your league in the offseason, decide on a rule so that next time it comes up, hopefully it never comes up again, but if it does, you will have a infrastructure in place to address it. So that's all of our mailbag questions. Jesse, dude, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on and doing this. I hope we get to do it again later in the season and into next year if we continue to thrive and grow as a new independent show here.
Bro, you will thrive and grow, man. You're a great dude. You're a great host, man, and that's really important to do. And I wish you nothing but success in this space. And if you ever need anything, man, please reach out, and I'll try to do my best to help you out, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I would love to get on. If you ever need anybody, just let me know. I'm just a Twitter DM away. Or a car drive away, whatever.
Yeah, as we learned, I could probably throw a paper airplane through your window and hit you next time I need you. But dude, that's right back at you. Really appreciate it. I'm a fan of yours. I'm a fan of your content. Why don't you take another minute to plug everything you got going on?
Yeah, listen, man. It's just my Twitter handle, bro. Dynasty Humble Senior. Like I said, I do some videos for the Fantasy Authority. They're a great platform as well. If you ever need anything, man, you guys questions and, Greg can't get to you, just, you can fly me a DM. My DMs are always open. You could always public shout me out and, I'll answer those too. I'm always on my phone. So, and if you ever have any personal questions or personal issues going on in your personal life, man, feel free to reach out as well. I'm a safe space, and, I think it's important that, mental health is a concern, and, just, check that too. And if you ever need to talk about that, my DM's always open as a impartial third party, or just to shoot the shit.
For sure, man.
So, yeah.
That's really important, especially now, especially with the way the world has been the last couple of years, and especially with everything going on in the fantasy football space the last couple of weeks with tags and everything has been hard.
Yeah.
So same goes for me. DMs are always open. Jesse, great dude, great resource on Twitter. Hit him up. Very responsive. Here for anything you need, including great Dynasty advice every week. He is at DynastyHumbleSR on Twitter. And, dude, I have to ask, and I'm sure everybody asks you this, but is there a Dynasty Humble Jr.? Where does that come from?
So my old name used to be JW Humble, and there was somebody that had JW Humble. So I put the SR just to like that I'm, the originator. So when I made the Dynasty Humble, I could have just been Dynasty Humble, and I was like, nah, I should just put the C in just to stay true to my roots. I should probably drop it at some point. But
that is a much funnier answer than I was expecting. What a power move. I respect that.
Yeah.
Dude, thanks again for doing this. This is Fantasy Fanline. We'll be live every Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern time for the rest of the season. We are back next weekend, same time, same place, wherever you're watching or listening. We got Craig Schmucker from Overtime Heroics joining us. It's going to be a good one. You can subscribe and stream us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or find us the next day on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us everywhere at Fantasy Fanline. Visit our website for a full schedule of guests and to submit a question to our mailbag, which we spent the whole day talking through today. So if you want to write in there, you will probably get on the show next week. If you liked us, please leave a review. Tell a friend. That is how we grow and thrive as a new show. And hopefully we'll be back bigger and better next week. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time on Fantasy Fanline. Goodbye, everybody.